A single leaked photo just changed everything fans thought they knew about The Chosen. This is Season 7, Episode 7, and the resurrected Jesus has finally been seen. For 6 years, Utah has been the beating heart of The Chosen. Every desert walk, every dusty road, every quiet conversation between the apostles has been filmed against those same red rock hills. But this week, that chapter closed for good. Season 7 marked the final days of filming in Utah, and along with the farewell photos and emotional goodbyes from the cast, something else slipped out. Something nobody was supposed to see yet. A leaked image reportedly showing Jonathan Roumie in costume as the resurrected Jesus, dressed in white robes, standing among the apostles in the wilderness. It spread fast, it got deleted fast, and it left the fandom scrambling to make sense of what they'd just glimpsed. Before diving into that reveal, it's worth rewinding to understand how the week built up to it, because nothing about this leak happened in isolation. The most recent behind-the-scenes recap picked up right where the previous week left off, with the cast and crew preparing for a pivotal walk toward Jerusalem. This detail matters more than it might seem at first. Multiple set photos this season have shown the 12 remaining apostles dressed in slightly updated costumes, subtle changes in color, layering, and accessories that hint at where each character is emotionally and narratively. Andrew has been spotted with a new reddish overcoat. John has been seen with a red scarf added to his usual look. These aren't random wardrobe choices. Throughout the show's run, costume evolution has consistently tracked character growth, and this pattern appears to be continuing as the series heads toward its climax. Also present in recent set photos is Ivan Jasso, who plays Yusef, a character many fans already believe is meant to represent Joseph of Arimathea. If that theory holds, his role is expected to grow significantly, possibly positioning him as a quiet ally to Jesus during the events surrounding the crucifixion and its aftermath. Alongside him, familiar faces like Nicodemus and members of the extended Capernaum community have appeared in group scenes, along with Zebedee driving a cart in what looks like a transitional, reflective sequence. Cyrus, a character fans have anticipated seeing on screen for some time, also appeared in costume for what seems to be the first time, giving longtime viewers a small but meaningful payoff. Once the recap wrapped, attention shifted to the new week, which covered 4 full days of filming. This stretch of production turned out to be unusually eventful, and it's easy to see why fans immediately started picking it apart frame by frame. Group shots reconfirmed all 11 surviving apostles walking together, a visual that fans have taken as a signal that the story is approaching its final act. Judas, notably absent, was a quiet but heavy reminder of how far this season has already traveled emotionally. One of the more curious moments this week involved a large exterior set built to resemble the outskirts of a city, complete with market stalls, tents, and a green screen backdrop clearly intended for digital compositing later. Many viewers immediately connected this to the Eastern Gate area near Jerusalem, the same location associated with the earlier triumphal entry. Whether this is meant to represent that exact spot again or a different nearby location connected to the resurrection storyline remains unclear, but the visual cues strongly suggest the production is building toward major Jerusalem-centered scenes. Then came a detail that quietly stirred a lot of speculation. Photos surfaced showing an enormous lighting rig setup in the middle of the day, an unusually powerful setup for outdoor daylight filming. On the surface, this might seem like a simple technical detail, but longtime followers of the show's production process know that intense lighting setups like this are often used for supernatural or divine moments, scenes involving glowing effects, radiant light, or otherworldly appearances. It's the kind of clue that seems almost throwaway at first, but one that becomes very relevant later once paired with what would eventually be confirmed through the leaked image. Beyond the technical and visual clues, this week was also defined by a wave of emotional farewell posts from cast and crew members. Actors and crew alike shared reflections on wrapping their final scenes in Utah, with many acknowledging just how much the state's landscape has shaped the visual identity of the series since its earliest seasons. It's a bittersweet moment for the production, marking the end of one era as filming transitions to Texas for the remainder of the season's shoot. All of this set the stage for what would become the most talked about leak of Season 7 so far, one that finally gave fans their first real look at Jesus in his resurrected form. Before the big reveal, one particular photo from set stopped a lot of viewers in their tracks, and it had nothing to do with Jesus at all. A behind-the-scenes shot showed what appeared to be a person partially buried in the ground, face covered, being carefully positioned by crew members. At first glance, it looked almost like a resurrection scene, but a closer look ruled out the obvious assumption. This wasn't a rock tomb, which immediately meant it couldn't be a depiction of Jesus' own resurrection, since Jewish burial customs of that era involved sealed stone tombs, not burial directly in soil. That single detail shifted the entire theory in a different direction. The leading idea among fans centers on the resurrected saints mentioned briefly in the Gospel of Matthew, a passage that describes tombs opening and holy people being raised at the moment of Jesus' death, later appearing in Jerusalem after his resurrection. It's one of the more mysterious and rarely dramatized moments in the New Testament, and if The Chosen is choosing to depict it, this could be one of the first major screen adaptations to give that event real narrative weight. Scripture doesn't name these individuals or explain exactly how many there were, which leaves the show creative freedom to interpret the moment in a way that still feels grounded and respectful to the text. Given the placement of this scene within the same week as major resurrection-related filming, the timing lines up in a way that feels far from coincidental. Naturally, fans began floating names. Some wondered if this could be John the Baptist, whose death occurred earlier in the story and who technically qualifies as someone who died before Jesus. However, most viewers pointed out that any depiction of John would almost certainly include his signature beard, which wasn't visible in the leak shot. Others jokingly suggested Judas, though that theory was dismissed almost instantly, since Judas's fate in the biblical narrative firmly excludes him from being counted among the righteous who were raised. The truth is, Scripture itself is vague on exactly who these resurrected individuals were, which means the show has room to make its own carefully considered choice, one that will likely be explained more clearly once the episode actually airs. While that mystery continued to circulate, another moment quietly stole attention. A blurry but unmistakable photo showed two men standing together near what looked like a well and a small watering area, the kind of humble, rural setting the show frequently uses for quiet character moments. One of the two men was immediately recognized by longtime fans as a supporting character connected to John the Baptist, having first appeared several seasons ago and returning periodically throughout the series. The second man, however, sparked immediate curiosity because while his face looked familiar, fans couldn't quite place where they'd seen him before. It turns out he has a background in other biblical film and television projects, having portrayed Peter in a separate well-known dramatization of the Gospels years before joining this production in a different role. This detail opened the door to a compelling theory. Two unnamed disciples appear in Luke's Gospel during a scene often referred to as the road to Emmaus, a moment that takes place after the resurrection, where two followers of Jesus are walking away from Jerusalem, deep in grief and confusion, unaware that the man walking beside them is Jesus himself. One of these two disciples is explicitly named in Scripture, a man called Cleopas, while the identity of the second remains one of the New Testament's enduring open questions. Some theologians have speculated it could have been Cleopas's wife. Others have suggested a fellow disciple entirely unnamed elsewhere in the Gospels. If the show is indeed setting up this scene, it would mark one of the most emotionally rich and theologically significant moments to adapt, capturing the raw human experience of encountering the risen Christ without immediately recognizing him. Both of these moments, the burial scene and the mysterious pair near the well, appear to be building toward the same overarching narrative thread, one centered entirely on the aftermath of the resurrection and how ordinary people responded to encountering something they couldn't fully explain. And that same theme carries directly into the biggest and most talked about leak of the entire week, the one that gave fans their very first confirmed look at Jesus after his resurrection. The image itself didn't stay online for long, but long enough to spread across fan pages, forums, and group chats within hours. It showed Jonathan Rumey standing in the Utah wilderness, surrounded by several apostles, dressed in a simple white robe layered over a matching undergarment. No elaborate designs, no dramatic new styling, nothing meant to shock. And that restraint is exactly what makes the choice so meaningful. Throughout the show's run, every character's costume has evolved to reflect their internal journey. Matthew's wardrobe has shifted from wealthy tax collector to humble follower. Mary Magdalene's clothing has changed as her sense of identity and purpose deepened. But Jesus has always been the one constant. Season after season, his core outfit has remained essentially unchanged, a quiet visual statement built directly on the idea that he is, as scripture puts it, the same yesterday, today, and forever. This new resurrected look doesn't abandon that pattern. It builds on it. The same simple tunic, the same familiar face, just elevated into something new, reflecting a body that scripture describes as glorified rather than simply healed or restored. That distinction matters more than casual viewers might realize. The resurrection accounts in the Gospels go out of their way to describe Jesus' post-resurrection appearances as strange and disorienting, even for the people who knew him best. In one account, Mary Magdalene stands weeping outside the empty tomb and turns to see Jesus standing right in front of her, yet she doesn't recognize him at first, mistaking him for the gardener. It isn't until he speaks her name directly that she realizes who she's talking to. In another account, several of the apostles are out fishing when a figure appears on the shore at a distance, giving them instructions about where to cast their nets. They don't recognize him either, not until the massive catch of fish that follows triggers a memory of an earlier, nearly identical miracle. These aren't small narrative details. They suggest that Jesus' resurrected form carried something different about it, something that made him both familiar and strange at the same time, recognizable in essence, but altered in a way scripture never fully explains. That ambiguity is part of what makes this leaked image so fascinating. There's no definitive biblical description of what a resurrected, glorified body actually looks like in physical terms. The closest scripture comes is in the book of Revelation, where Jesus is described in vivid, almost overwhelming imagery, hair white like wool, eyes like blazing fire, a voice like the sound of rushing water, a face shining with overwhelming brightness. Whether that description is meant to be taken literally or understood as symbolic, apocalyptic imagery has been debated by scholars for centuries. What is clear is that this leaked photo represents a deliberate creative decision, choosing subtlety and familiarity over spectacle, letting the emotional and spiritual weight of the resurrection carry the moment rather than special effects or dramatic visual reinvention. That decision also ties directly back to something noticed earlier in the week, the unusually massive lighting setup spotted on set. Once the resurrected Jesus photo surfaced, that detail suddenly made a lot more sense. Lighting on this scale is typically reserved for moments requiring a heightened, almost otherworldly visual atmosphere, exactly the kind of treatment a resurrection appearance would call for. It's a reminder that even the smallest, seemingly unrelated details from behind-the-scenes coverage often connect to something much larger once the full picture comes into focus. Taken together, everything from this week, the emotional farewells, the mysterious burial scene, the two unidentified figures near the well, and finally the leaked resurrection photo, paints a picture of a production reaching one of its most important turning points. Season 7 is clearly moving toward the emotional and spiritual center of the entire series, the moment the story has been building toward since its very first episode. And based on what leaked this week, it looks like the show is choosing authenticity and quiet reverence over spectacle, trusting the weight of the resurrection story to speak for itself. For a show that has spent 6 seasons carefully building trust with its audience through grounded, human storytelling, that choice feels exactly right. Whatever comes next, whether it's the road to Emmaus, the appearance to the disciples, or moments still hidden from leaks entirely, one thing is certain. The most emotionally significant chapter of The Chosen is finally coming into view, and fans are going to be watching every frame of it closely. If this breakdown helped you make sense of everything leaking out of Season 7, do us a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel grow. Subscribe if you want to stay ahead of every new leak, theory, and behind-the-scenes detail as this season unfolds. And drop a comment below letting us know what you think that white robe reveal means for the rest of the season, and who you think those two mystery figures by the well really are. We read every single comment, and honestly, some of the best theories on this channel have come straight from you. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next breakdown.